We have more off-the-court issues to discuss surrounding rookie Brandon Miller. Then we'll actually get to the basketball and give you a preseason review before tip-off October 25th, all today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. I'm Walker Mail. You can catch me on Sports Radio 92.7 WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3. And that's Doug Branson. Couple of different ways you can catch him, not only on this podcast, also on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com, or you can even join him on his subtext. Basically, it's one-on-one access to all of the Hornets craziness that is Doug Branson. It's like getting his phone number, and you can also ask him where he got that More Thor t-shirt that he is wearing. If you want to check us out on the YouTube channel, it's a beautiful thing, Doug. I'm
so glad you noticed.
You made it yourself. Yep, it's pretty. It's pretty.
Yeah.
So
thank you. Yeah, I made it myself. This is a custom shirt. You can get your hands on one. I'll throw a linky in the description. Show your pride if you're part of the More Thor movement. If you paid your dues, if you come to the meetings, then definitely you want to get your hands on this shirt. The dues don't pay. I should say the dues don't pay for the shirt, unfortunately, but the shirt is available.
Okay, yeah. So you've paid your dues, and now you have to pay for the T-shirt, but only then can you become
I have a baby.
part
I don't know if you know this, but I got a baby. That baby likes to eat, and it's in a growth spurt right now. It really likes to eat. So, doing what it can.
So help feed Doug's baby by purchasing More Thor T-shirts, and we'll give you the link at the bottom of the episode in that information box. Okay, let's go. Speaking of bad information here, like we get more over the weekend. We get some more off the court issue here, Doug. Brandon Miller, it's not anything we didn't know about, but now there's a new development regarding the death of Jamia Harris in Tuscaloosa last year that caused a little bit of the drama to the point where maybe you didn't want to select Brandon Miller. So just to be clear, ESPN dropped an article on October 20th that the family of a woman killed in a shooting on the Tuscaloosa Strip near the University of Alabama campus has filed a federal wrongful death lawsuit against 3 men, including Brandon Miller, the number 2 overall pick. The other 2 men named in the complaint are former Alabama player Darius Miles and Michael Davis, who are facing capital murder charges in the shooting death of Jamia Harris. Miller was not charged with the crime, which is important to note, at least for clear purposes. The lawsuit was filed in U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Alabama Western Division and demands a jury trial to award damages. Harris, accompanied by her boyfriend, were in Tuscaloosa visiting her cousin when she was shot in the early morning hours of January 15th. I did want to scroll down and just get a couple of other updates here. A police investigator testified during a February hearing that Miller had been at the scene of the fatal killing and that the gun police say was used in the killing of Harris was retrieved from the back of Brandon Miller's car. So with all that information, don't know if there's anything else you want to update here, Doug, but what are some of your thoughts on yet another off-the-court issue surrounding the Charlotte Hornets, and some pretty serious ones at that?
Yeah, I mean, my heart goes out to the family of Jamia Harris, who is trying to put the pieces back together after losing their family member. But this wasn't something that was entirely unexpected. I believe you and I even had a conversation about this eventuality of some kind of civil action being brought against Brandon Miller. Before he was drafted, I think we had that conversation that, hey, when you're drafting Brandon Miller, he's got to answer some questions on this event, but also there could be further legal action. And while he hasn't been criminally charged, it doesn't appear he will be criminally charged. I don't think I can say that that's like 100% out of the question. It doesn't seem very likely at this point after everything that's been said by the Tuscaloosa authorities. But hopefully the Hornets would have been somewhat sure about that before making such a big decision. But here we are. And I don't really have anything particular to say on this incident that we haven't already said before that would be important or illuminating for people listening. But I would like to ask you, Walker, what do you feel like the cumulative effect of all of this off the court news is? Whether, when you take this with everything that's happened with Miles Bridges and James Bouknight, because I think, fans are able to take each of these individual incidents and sort of, I don't know if rationalize them is the right word, or just find a way to understand them such to the point that they can continue to watch the Charlotte Hornets. But I wonder about the cumulative effect of all of this, because I get text on the subtext or whatever, or even from just, random people that I talk to and friends that I have who are saying, man, this seems like a lot. Like all of this seems like a lot for people who are just trying to watch the game. What do you think about the cumulative effect of all of this?
Well, because it is a lot. Yeah. I mean, look, so we can speak from people who cover the team. We can speak on account of people that do a daily podcast about this thing. That's what's unique about the Locked On Podcast Network, is that we give you a daily podcast. Mm-hmm. And we've had a lot of content to go over and not a lot to go over with basketball comparatively. And that's been over the last year and a half, really, with the Miles Bridges arrest. That's when it all started. And then you have James Bouknight. However, and I don't want to rank any of these incidences, but when you talk about James Bouknight, even there's something to do there with the DUI arrest that, we knew about after there was one issue in Storrs, Connecticut, when he was there playing basketball. So when we're talking about all of this adding up, yeah, it does take a toll. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I also understand how important it is to continue to discuss this stuff because, one, we're just providing information and then the fans get to choose what they do with that information. But also, we're in the opinion business, and so we're sharing our opinion on it. It's damning. It makes the Hornets' reputation awful. I saw Josh Lloyd, the host of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast. I forget what the tweet was, but it was something to do with just how awful the reputation of the Hornets organization is, and that it's the worst in the NBA. And Josh Lloyd, I think he might have even tweeted at the Hornets saying, yeah, this is what people think of the franchise right now. It's damning, not only locally, because we have to cover it so much, but also even nationally. There are jokes saying, fire this organization off into the sun. Just when you go through expansion, just get a couple of different other teams and just, move the Hornets again. Like you see all these jokes, and it's not like I lose sleep over the jokes at night, right, Doug? But it's not anything that we want to talk about, and it's a complete 180 from all of the good vibes that we had surrounding Hornets Media Day to kick off the good season, or the regular season, what we thought was going to be good.
Right. And despite, however all of these incidences on their own, however they resolve themselves, and if the parties involved, the players involved are absolved of guilt in these situations, what's the cumulative effect of this news? Not just on fans, but on potential future players for this organization when they get into free agency or they trade for someone and try to convince that player to stay. Can they really convince that player that this is an organization that is stable? And that's important, right? Because good players want to play for organizations that have a chance to win. And when you have incident after incident and distraction after distraction and things that legitimately take good players off the court, that really goes against an argument that you're an organization that is stable enough to endure an 82-game regular season and then to fight and do what you need to do to win in the playoffs. And I'm not sure that the organization at this point is really like calculating that cumulative effect on their ability to garner future talent. And as you said, on their ability to attract sort of casual fans, because that's what they need. Like, I think the diehard Hornets fans, there's going to be a subset of them that look at all of this and go, all right, I'm going to go watch soccer. FC made the playoffs. I'm going to forget about basketball for a while, or I'll cheer for the Panthers to maybe win one game this season. They'll figure that out. There's going to be a small subset. Most of the diehard fans will just stick it out and say, look, I've been a Hornets fan all my life. I'm just going to watch this team and put the blinders on and try to forget about it. But the casual fans who are watching, all they know about the Hornets is the occasional replay that they catch from Nick Carboni, and then they hear all of this news. And I just think when they're making decisions about how they're going to spend their entertainment dollars, I do think that there are legitimately a larger group of casual fans that look at all of this and say, man, I don't know. Just seems kind of weird, everything that's going on around there. You hear all these things, and I don't know if maybe we just go to an FC game or something. It's
right. And
I think there is an effect. I feel like there has to be an effect.
The cynical approach here on behalf of the Hornets would be to say, well, we understand how uncomfortable this is going to be initially, but as long as we win enough games, people will overlook all of the drama. But
they haven't said anything, so you're doing the only thing you can do, which is speculate on what's happening, at the Royal Court. But they haven't said anything.
Well, and they would never say that. I'm just saying that's the
right.
Please, I would rather you release statements of nothing than ever say that, even if it is the quiet part out loud. So I'm not expecting that. My point is, even if you take the cynical approach, which is true, that if you win enough games, then you're going to overlook all of this. You think that roster is going to win enough games to the point where
the problem is that all these things hurt. Right. The problem is that all these things hurt your ability to do that.
Yeah. So now when you're trying to get new fans, so now you have all of these problems. It's hard to get casual fans. The way to do that would be to win games despite the off-court problems. But the over-under, the expected outcome of this season is play in, hopefully able to get into a playoff series. And by the way, the last thing I'll mention is what's a little unfortunate too is that it's not like you can blame this on same old regime, but we'll get some change, because we already got change with the owners and it's still happening. Gabe Plotkin, Rick Schnall, you have new ownership. No, they have not been at the helm of the organization for a long time, but you've even changed hands here, and yet you still have these issues with knowledge of these issues, and yet still making some of these decisions. And we'll see what they do next offseason with a full year under their belt, but ownership's already changed.
Yeah.
And so it's not like you're going to just leave those ways behind you into the sunset with this new ownership. Now it's happening right now, despite them taking over a couple months ago.
Well, they still have an opportunity. I mean, I think that's really what I'm looking for more than anything from the new ownership group is some recognition. I think there are a number of fans that are feeling like, hey, we're seeing all this stuff happen, and the Hornets aren't really they're not taking accountability for it. They're not commenting on it. They're not saying, hey, we know that this is not normal. Everybody can see that this is not normal. There are too many. It's like every weekend. Some revelation that drops on Friday, it's their version of the, ladies and gentlemen, the weekend meme is just some more off the court, more court news in the court, really, court news. And this is not normal. And I think at some point the ownership would be helped by looking the fans in the eye and saying, hey, we know this is not normal and we're working on it. We're cleaning it up. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. All right, do you want to get to the actual on-the-court basketball product?
Yeah!
All right, baby. Whew. All right, now I'm excited. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
The Hornets just played their last preseason game, and they almost got out of the preseason without having an Uggo. But they did. They had an Uggo.
So close.
And it is so close. And it happened against the Boston Celtics. Hey, it could happen against worse teams. We'll give our overall preseason thoughts and my thoughts on the Celtics game in just a moment, not before we bring up Game Time. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. It's the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your ticket purchase. See the view from your seat before you even buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show. They show your total up front right away, so you know you're getting a great deal without any hidden fees, which I think is important. I've gotten duped so many times. Buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. And plus, they're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. They have deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, too, and even in an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. Locked On NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Preseason review coming up next. All right, Doug, I did not hear your Boston Celtics game review. So can't imagine it was a good one. I was in the mountains, like secluded, no service part of the mountains. And so I did not get to see this game live. Coming back and watching it, not so pretty. You could see the box score pretty immediately. And I was like, oh, okay, they missed every shot they took from 3-point range. So nobody except for Terry Rozier, Doug, and Mark Williams, but doesn't really count when you're talking about him being so close to the basket. Nobody from, shooting from the outside had a very nice game against the Boston Celtics when it comes to their efficiency, except for Terry Rozier, who made half of his field goals. Didn't shoot well from three. I should say that. Like, that's still true of Terry as well, but did make 6 of his 12 field goals that he attempted. 14 points for Terry. LaMelo, not a great shooting night, hit 2 of 6 of his 3-point field goals. But overall, not great. JT Thor, there was not the Thorner 3 from him, missed all 3 of his attempts. And so that would make them go 4 of 28 from the outside. They dropped the first quarter 34-19. I mean, so yeah, you've already updated it. My thoughts are it would have been nice to end on a good note. And they weren't able to do that when we had a good preseason overall. We felt good even despite the competitive losses. But then right before you get to the season tip-off, October 25th, they lay an egg, and it happens immediately. I mean, it's out of reach after the first half.
Yeah, nobody shot well. They haven't shot well all preseason.
Yeah, they didn't.
If you take away Gordon Hayward, who played in 2 games, and I think he shot a 3 in each of those games and made them. So he was 2 for 2, 100% in those 2 games. If you take that away, your leading 3-point shooter is a tie at 33.3% between Nick Smith Jr. and Terry Rozier. It drops to 28.6 with PJ Washington. LaMelo shot 28%. And then Brandon Miller shot 7.7%. He was 1 for 13 in the preseason. It is concerning. And my now that I've had some distance away from that game a little bit, because the story off of that game was physicality on the glass. That is what Clifford noticed right after the game. That's what he was focused on. Has got to be more physical on the glass. Nick Richards got beat up. Mark Williams got beat up. We've got to do better, especially at the 5 position with that, okay? And I that definitely happened. I respect that. That definitely did happen a little bit later in the game. But the blowout began because this offense looked extremely disorganized and disinterested in moving off ball when LaMelo Ball had the ball in his hands against a Boston defense that was ready to go. Now, Boston's defense is elite. They're going to make a lot of offenses look bad. But I think there are serious concerns about this offense's ability to generate looks in the half court and to knock down threes. And I think that is, if not a bigger story than the offensive rebounding and the defensive rebounding, it's right on par. I mean, those 2 things I think are sort of right there in the running for biggest issue with the Charlotte Hornets right now.
Yeah, and so, Brandon Miller here, as we talk about him off the court and on the court, 8 points for him, but this was his first inefficient overall game. He had not, as you mentioned, the 3-point shooting numbers have been really bad, small sample size, but they've been really bad this entire preseason. But man, not even hitting any more shots, right? I mean, he goes 3 of 9. Any shot that he took inside the 3-point arc. Had 5 turnovers too, which has been a problem for Brandon that I expect to continue if you try to boost that usage percentage for Brandon. We know what his contribution is going to be. If you want to get the most out of Brandon, in my opinion, you're talking about him. And if he's starting or if he's playing with the starters, then low usage role. Yet LaMelo has the basketball in his hands, working pick and roll with Mark Williams, with PJ Washington. If Miles Bridges is in the lineup, you're working with him. And then you're trying to draw the defense in. You're kicking out to Brandon. And even if the 3-point shot wasn't working, you're seeing what he can do either as a shot maker from the outside or a secondary decision maker, right? So you attack the closeout and then you figure out what you can do there. If you attack the closeout, then maybe you only give me 1 dribble because I know you're turning it over. You're just not, we're going to learn in that regard of the game for your first season. That's what I expect Brandon Miller to do. By the way, really effective role that can be for this team. It's just all about, can you knock down shots and can you make smart decisions as a secondary guy? And if you do those things, it'll be a successful rookie year. In this game, too many turnovers, too many missed shots.
Well, and you brought up the word that I was going to bring up, and it's the perfect word, the secondary option. because I think when you come out of college and you're the primary option, when the offense is sort of focused on you, it's a lot different operating in that space than it is when the ball's coming to you maybe a little bit later in the possession, when the defense is already set. NBA defenses are just in another universe than college defenses. And that's what you saw against Boston, right? You know, he was a secondary option. He would get it a little bit later in the shot clock. He would try to create something on his own, and two guys would quickly be on him and they would strip it. And he doesn't know how to, I think there's two things: knowing how to deal with that particular situation, but also knowing when, all right, I need to move this basketball away because they're focused in on me. The defense has me locked up. So, yeah, I mean, he's going to navigate through those things. As you said, there will be nights when he has turnovers. I think his best nights will be when they can get him going in transition, because you saw him hit a really sweet layup when he caught the whole defense off guard in transition. And when they can get him with some catch and shoot opportunities and he starts to hit them early, and so he builds a little bit of confidence, then you're going to see some big games. If he's doing what he did against Boston, it might work against some teams that don't have a great defense, that don't have guys that can get in your shirt. But against the top half of defenses in the NBA, he's probably going to struggle as a rookie early on.
Yeah, if you have, if you have cut like big, strong wings, it's not going to help Brandon. You're going to have to try to blow by him. And you're talking about a Jaylen Brown and a Jason Tatum playing in at this game, at least with the starters. And, you know, it's going to be a tough matchup for Brandon. And that layup you're talking about, I will say, you know, the rebounding has been good, you know, for Brandon Miller. He takes it coast to coast. I like that. So, you know, LaMelo and Brandon, both good rebounders. So if you have your top decision makers grabbing the basketball, that's fun. Like that. So both of those guys, that was the coast to coast. He just decided, all right, the defense is a little too lazy. Going to push the pace, and the C's part. Center decides to stick with Nick Richards, and I'm just going to finger roll it in. To have guys like LaMelo and Brandon with that ability, a really nice ability to do that, that's going to be a lot of fun, and only emphasizes your transition argument.
Yeah, I mean, the good news for Hornets fans is that other than, I think, some of the offensive issues, Brandon Miller has looked really good and found ways to contribute. I mean, he was the third leading rebounder in the preseason at 5.8. The only two that were better were your centers, Nick Richards and Mark Williams. So he's been able to do that. He's been able to pass it pretty effectively. When he's not turning it over, his passes look clean. They look like the right thing to do. It's like the ball moves in a place where you go, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That did not look like someone who was hurried into a bad decision and doesn't know how to process information quickly. That's what I see with rookies all the time. That's the normal thing to see with rookies, is they make a pass and you go, well, either that pass was way off target, or they just, why did they pass to that guy? That made no sense. And that's what Clifford keeps trying to tell you, and that's what you can see when you watch him, is that he's able to process information in a way that rookies typically don't. And that's going to help him have, I think, a good season. There is a gulf between good season and great season that I think there are some questions to answer before I'm ready to say, oh yeah, Brandon Miller is getting ready to have a great season. There's some questions that need to be answered in like the first 5 to 10 games when he's going to get a major opportunity, because they've got injuries right now such that, you know, he might get even more minutes than I thought he was going to get before all this started.
Yeah, and it would have been nice too, right, to end on a good note like you did Summer League. So if you struggle in Summer League, but then you end with a good performance, great. Here, it's the exact opposite. I thought Brandon played pretty well, except this was a pretty poor performance from him. So now you're heading at, look, it doesn't mean whatever you do last is going to be what you apply to the next phase of basketball. But again, it's always nice to gain some momentum instead of looking at something bad that happened in the last outcome.
The Hornets, I think, are bad in preseason by design, because Steve Clifford likes to run camp that's very scrimmagey, that's not like, hey, let's put in our offense, let's get our defense organized. That tends to happen later on in the preseason, and maybe through the first couple of games. They're trying to figure all of that out. So I think by design, this team doesn't look great on the court. And if the shots aren't falling, then they're probably going to lose the game. And in nearly every single one of these games, the shots, the open ones, didn't fall for the Charlotte Hornets. And so that's why I think you get the results that you get. And I think that's also why I think when they get into the regular season, hopefully you see LaMelo Ball turn it up a little bit and not turn it over. You see a healthy Gordon Hayward. You see Terry Rozier carry the momentum that he really did have through this preseason period into the season. And you hope that Mark Williams and Nick Richards got a good wake-up call. That's what I mean. I love that they got blown out and the way that they got blown out, and that there was a moment where Clifford was like, hey, Five's got to do better, because you want Nick Richards and Mark Williams to be more physical, and that was a good wake-up call.
All right, see if it actually works for him in this game coming up against the Hawks later this week, Wednesday to be exact, so it should be fun. All right, we have one more segment to go. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
We do have an injury to report. We'll give you those details in just a moment. Now, before we bring up FanDuel, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You could snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, even more than that. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. One more segment to go. Locked On Hornets. Doug, unfortunately, we did not get out of the preseason unscathed. That was true even before this injury. Bryce McGowan's going down with that ankle injury, if I'm not mistaken. So hopefully Bryce McGowan's can get healthy as soon as possible. But you do have another injury at that hybrid point guard backcourt position. Frank Ntilikina, he underwent an MRI on Friday, and it revealed a non-displaced fracture in his left tibia. He'll be reevaluated in 4 weeks. So, Doug, the guy that was brought in for certainly defensive purposes in the backcourt, trying to, I don't know about replicate what you had with Dennis Smith Jr., but the same idea. You know, Steve Clifford called him maybe the best pick and roll defender in the NBA, certainly among them. So, what does Frank Ntilikina's absence mean for this Charlotte Hornets team as constructed?
Well, if you believe that Steve Clifford is a good defensive coach, then I think by virtue of that, you believe that he has an eye for who can play defense and who can't. And he not only told you that he was the best pick and roll defender in the league, I think he also said that Frank represented the best defender on this team. And so losing him for 4 weeks will have an effect on this team's ability to guard for the full 48. There's no doubt about that, because unlike Dennis Smith Jr., you could trust Frank Ntilikina on the defensive end of the floor against 1s, 2s, and 3s, and even sometimes 4s. Like, he had the defensive versatility to guard multiple positions. Dennis Smith had some of that too, but due to his size, you know, you would trust him on 1s and 2s and then get a little bit questionable if you had to put him on a bigger wing player. And so he offered the Hornets that opportunity. Now, there were some big downsides on the offensive end. You know, his shooting numbers, even among bad shooting overall in the preseason, his shooting stood out as particularly poor. So, but his passing, you know, you're losing playmaking as well. So his absence will mean something for this rotation, especially when they break the lineup. I think Hornets fans can be thankful that no major starters were hurt seriously in this preseason, but this injury will hurt the team.
Yeah, defensively it will. And so now it's, okay, who do you trust? It's LaMelo in the backcourt. I mean, you don't have many answers up there. As far as defensive pieces, you feel good guarding at the point of attack, having that kind of versatility with that being their role. You just don't have that guy. It's all about how much is LaMelo going to improve at that end. It's how much do you want to bring size into the equation with Brandon Miller? And then it's Cody Martin. You know, who knows about his health status? If he comes back, when he comes back, is he healthy? I mean, yeah, it's going to be a problem, I think. And then you're going to have to. Now, what is nice is that it's not like you don't have anybody protecting the rim anymore. 2 years ago, this would have been a way bigger issue. It's still an issue. But now you have Mark Williams back there, and at least I have to imagine he's going to clean up some of those mistakes, deter the point guard or whoever gets by their man on the perimeter, deter them from shooting if they do get into the paint, and maybe that allows their guy to recover fast enough. But that's basically what you're hoping for.
Important to note that the Hornets put themselves in this position by waiting a long time to get involved in any kind of free agency discussion for the point guard position. Everyone, like they have the center position in many years past, everyone that had eyeballs and looked at the rotation went, hey, you've got a large gaping hole at backup point guard, maybe do something about that. And they waited late, and they got some options that I think could best be described as sort of last chance, last opportunity, things that they did with Dennis Smith Jr. as well. And that worked out with DSJ, but it was a roll of the dice. And here they are again rolling the dice, and they rolled snake eyes with this injury, unfortunately. And we'll see what happens after 4 weeks. Maybe he's able to come back. But in terms of what it means for the rotation, there's two separate things, right? There's the backup point guard idea, and then there's how do you defend wing players effectively when you break the lineup and there's only one starter or zero starters out on the floor. On the backup point guard thing, they're probably just going to rely on Terry Rozier, which could have downstream effects. We saw what him playing a lot of point guard did to his shooting numbers last season. He's had a good preseason, and I think you can look at that and go, yeah, he's got a good preseason because he's gotten to play a lot of shooting guard. He hasn't had to initiate a lot of the offense. And so I think that could have an effect there. Edmund Sumner, I think it means that he makes the team. Teo Maladone, I think it means that Teo, if he can get back and get healthy, they may look at him for some period of time as well to pick up 10 minutes or so. They've been careful with LaMelo's minutes in the preseason, but I don't think they can be careful anymore. You're just going to have to play LaMelo a lot. And on the wing, Clifford telegraphed this a little bit after the Boston game, saying that there was a possibility of just getting bigger at the backup two, and playing Brandon Miller there some, and even JT Thor, giving him some, more Thor. I got the t-shirt on. This could mean more Thor at the 2 and the 3 so that they can guard wings effectively when they break the lineup.
That would be crazy. JT Thor at the 2 would be something I did not.
Let's get crazy. I'm ready. Let's get crazy. Who cares? Let's go. Let's do it.
Last thing, just for anybody wondering about the rookies, Amari Bailey, Nick Smith Jr., I would say Nick Smith Jr., he got the minutes this preseason, but that's not his role. Point guard, nor being a good defender this rookie season, that's not his role. Now, Amari Bailey, you would argue that, defensively, that is where he might be able to make a mark on this team, but wasn't getting many minutes. I think played 13 total this preseason, so that's just not somebody Steve Clifford is relying on right now. Maybe you get one of these injury, hopefully, knock on wood, if enough injuries happen and you just don't have any defense, then you might throw him out there as a high-energy guy, but that would be the only way. He does fit the mold defensively, but just not ready and only playing 13 minutes combined. Just for reference, Nick Smith Jr. played 11 minutes this last game. So even in a blowout, Amari wasn't getting any minutes in the preseason.
Yeah, when I heard Clifford say that they could upsize at the 2 off this Frank Ntilikina injury and go Brandon Miller, Thor, that to me, if you read between the lines there, was, Nick Smith Jr., you better learn Greensboro, buddy. Because, when it's G League time, Nick Smith Jr. is going to go down. And I think Amari Bailey, I know Amari Bailey will as well. And again, that's a good thing. That doesn't mean that I don't think that means, I won't speak for you, but for me, that doesn't mean I'm low on Nick Smith Jr. or low on Amari Bailey. It's just I know what Clifford trusts in the main lineup, and they're going to try to win games early in the season. And that's going to mean Nick Smith Jr. for the time being is going to have to figure some things out in Greensboro.
Yeah, it's okay for late first-round picks and second-round picks not to get rotation minutes their first year. That's totally fine. All right, that'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. Now make your second listen game-to-game NBA with the season starting soon. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the league with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.